My nickname's SpongeBob SquarePants.
I love it. Meet Stacey Copeland, England's first female Commonwealth super welterweight champion and former footballer, paving the way to inspire the next generation of females in sport.
I wanted to push myself as much as I could, reach my full potential, inspiring others, having a positive impact and using sport for good is still at my core. When I used to stay with my dad at the weekend, we just had a solid diet of Rocky, Karate Kid and Bruce Lee. He just looked at me and he said, "You can't box, kid. It's illegal in this country for females. You're going to go through grief, setbacks, heartbreak, disappointment. If your why runs through your veins, it's part of your soul, it's part of your being, and it's in every cell of you, then you will always find a way."
How do you keep fueling that fire?
A parent and a coach under the team recognised that I was a girl, shouted across the pitch that I'd have to leave the pitch, and I felt humiliated for doing something that I loved. And yet I went home and said to my mum, "We're going to have my hair cut short." And that was it. I was given a boy's name so I could pretend to be a boy and play football. There's so much more you can do if you feel proud of who you are.
Girls from the age of 5 onwards don't actually want to engage in any kind of sport.
And I'd only ever had the same narrative. Women aren't good enough, we shouldn't be there. Yes, there's an enormous presence now, female athletes who've pushed the boundaries. But
what else is needed? Welcome to another episode of Thinking Deeper. Today I'm in the studio with a sporting powerhouse, Stacey Copeland, a former English footballer and a boxing champion. Welcome to the studio, Stacey. This is our little singing bowl. I kind of call it our producer, really. There's some words in there that we've placed, and then all you do is basically pick a word out and we talk about that topic.
Okay.
So just to mix it up a bit, you're very famous. Everybody knows quite a lot about you. So this just mixes things up a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm just going to pass the bowl over across to you there. And if you can pick out the first word.
Unstoppable.
Wow. What a good one to start with. Unstoppable for me is basically what I see you as. It's a great word that describes everything that I know about you. What do you think makes you unstoppable?
I think being really clear on what my purpose is has always helped me. You can call it what you want, your why, your drive, your motivation. I guess people use different words for it. That's not the significant part. The significant part is knowing why I've always done what I've done. In sport, when I was competing, I was really clear about my whys. There was a personal one, which was that I wanted to push myself as much as I could, reach my full potential and achieve as much as I could in the time that I had. But there was a bigger one as well, which was about inspiring others, having a positive impact and using sport for good. There's one that I feel I can carry on with in the way that I want to, which is the second one. The first one I miss dearly because not having that competitive sports element in my life has been a big transition since I retired. However, inspiring others, having a positive impact and using sport for good is still at my core and always will be, hopefully. So I think that's what helps.
What's the reason for that?
Partly it's just the way we are, part of our wiring, but also the accumulative experiences that I've had, particularly as a female in the sports that I was in. My upbringing, my background in terms of working class background, there's lots and lots of different influences that make you see injustices in the world that once you do, you can't unsee them. And some of us just feel compelled to do something about it. And there came a point when I did. And from then on, you just look for ways that you can make a difference.
And you've chose to make a difference in still quite a challenging landscape, because although you started out a long time ago, it's not been an easy one for you to do. Were there ever times where you thought, why am I doing this? Were there times where you questioned your path?
Definitely. I never wanted to give up, though. There's a big difference between that. I never ever thought, this is it, I'm not going to do it anymore. I just got disheartened, I got frustrated. And I think that's going to be the same for anybody in life, even if you're not trying to push for change or progress and make things better for the next generation. Just trying to get through life, keep everybody you love alive is impossible. So you're going to go through, grief, setbacks, heartbreak, disappointment, even if you're not striving to do something extraordinary, because life is that way. And I think in our Western culture, we have a very binary way of looking at, well, that's a good thing and that's a bad thing, and therefore the emotions go with it. I know in other cultures they don't look at it that way. Experiences are just experiences. So therefore, we're going to have hardships and difficult times. If you're trying to create change, though, and do something different, and you're going against the status quo, as I have done many times in my life, then obviously there's a different element to it. And of course, at times you think, what is there a point to this? But again, if your why and your purpose, as it does for me, runs through your veins, it's part of your soul, it's part of your being, and it's in every cell of you, then you will always find a way, because as they say, the why will always enable you to endure anyhow. And that's certainly been the case for me.
And I'm sure that there's lots of people that are going to watch this that will feel inspired by this. And then there will be people that will have tried to do some good, some change, and hit a roadblock. When you were in that position of, why am I doing this? What was it then that got you over the edge so that you continued? And because that, having that fire in you, I mean, I can feel it just from the way you speak about it. You know, how do you keep fueling that fire even when there's walls hitting you that telling you it's not for you, you shouldn't do this anymore?
It's all the P's for me. So purpose, which I've already mentioned, and then finding a positive in things, even the things that look negative at the time. If I can find a positive in it, it's a huge fuel for me, which is a good thing. But in that interim period between an event that happens and finding that positive in it, that's a difficult period for me. But once I do find it, then the trajectory is a positive one. And then the third P is positive petrol pumps, as I see them, that if you're trying to lug something uphill, whether that's for change or, you know, anything that can be difficult, then you need those positive petrol pumps in your life, the people who I can go to, whether it's a phone call or a chat or whatever, or just knowing that they're there behind me fills my petrol tank up again with positivity. So I think you always need those. And the other side to that is that you don't always find a way. Yeah. So a couple of examples, when I was little and I played in my first football game, although the ban on women's football was lifted by then, the FA didn't recognise girls and women's football. So there were no leagues and structures in place for girls to play football. And in my first, proper game with my primary school team, so it went from playing in the playground to proper goals and a referee and with all of our little kits on. It was dead exciting. And then partway through the game, a parent and a coach on the other team recognised that I was a girl, shouted across the pitch that I'd have to leave the pitch. And, as a kid, I didn't have the words to articulate those feelings, but, I felt humiliated and like a weirdo for doing something that I loved. Now, for lots of kids, that's it. That puts them off from pursuing those passions, which is devastating, because imagine my life without sport. I mean, it's unthinkable. But I just wasn't wired that way. And that's why part of it must be my wiring, because I'd had limited life experiences at 7, 8 years old, as we all have. And yet I went home and said to my mum, we're going to have my hair cut short. And that was it. I was given a boy's name, had my hair cut short so I could pretend to be a boy and play football. That led to problems at school with kids saying, why do you want to be a boy, and calling me shim and she-male and all that stuff. And I didn't want to be a boy. I just wanted to play football. But
how was that making you feel, though? Because surely there's some contradiction here, right? You're doing something you absolutely love. Did you not at any point think this is just really unfair? And what did your mum say? I internalised it. I felt weird for a very, very long time. And even as a 16-year-old, getting my first England call up when I asked my boss, when I worked in the factory at the time, for time off, and he just mocked it and said, you want me to give you a week off to play for a women's football team? I said, well, it is the England team. It means a lot to me. Can I just take it unpaid? And I left that interaction feeling small and ashamed of what I was doing, rather than how I should have felt, which was immensely proud. And I can't change everybody like, that boss sat behind that desk. But especially for young people who had limited life experience, as I did then as a 16-year-old, and had only ever had the same narrative. Women aren't good enough, we shouldn't be there, it's silly, nobody's interested, you're no good, da-da-da-da-da. I didn't have any other narrative. I didn't have a toolbox with which to question that. So I left that interaction feeling that way. But I think we can all play a part in ensuring that, especially young people, as I say, with more limited life experiences, can leave, whether it's about race or class or any aspect of your humanity, gender or otherwise,
still feeling proud of who they are and what they do despite those narrow views. And that's what I try and use my platform for. And sport is a great platform for it because, obviously I'm biased, but honestly, it's one of the most powerful things on the planet for bringing about positive change, whether that's in an individual's life or a group, or indeed, sometimes we've seen whole societies. It's incredible.
And a whole country. And,
it's unbelievable what it can do. So I'm very fortunate to have a love for something that is, globally such a change maker.
I also think that Nelson Mandela didn't say it just for any old reason, right? He said sport would change people. Just looking at the kind of the conversation around women in sport, particularly now, I feel has become a really big platform to talk about issues generally in terms of how women are seen and elements of women's lives that for so long have been just literally quashed. Whether that's us talking about menstruation cycles, whether that's menopause, whether that's the general, the strength capacity of a man versus a woman. I just think that it's opened up so much dialogue now, and it's generating awareness like never before.
I think that sport has many qualities that make it unique to other things. It's unpredictable that in the same moment, at the very same time, you get such a range of emotions. So let's take a penalty shootout. That winning penalty goes in. You've got half the, players and fans absolutely devastated because that's their dream over.
Yeah.
And the other half, sort of the total opposite, absolute euphoria. It's very rare in life. You get that spectrum of emotion in the same moment at the same time. It's a meritocracy, or it should be. That doesn't matter how much money you've got or this or that. If you dedicate yourself and you get the right opportunities and you've got talent, you can make it to the very top. So it's a leveler in that way as well. So it's pretty incredible what sport can bring. So anything that's developed or any progress that's made in sport can manifest in other areas of society. And that is just true to what you're saying about women. It's seeing women up there sport happens in the rawest form that, you can have technology, but talent's still going to beat it. You can have all the resources and infrastructure, talent, or, someone taking that opportunity and mentally being ready, they can seize that moment. So it's raw and there's something magical about that. And so when we see that raw talent or that raw endeavour and effort and dedication right in front of us, sort of in front of our very eyes, it does impact you no matter what it is. And it happens with women like it happens with any groups of people, and it can instill a sense of pride in people. Even if you're not interested in that sport or that group of people, you can be proud of what they've accomplished, especially, I would say, if they look like you or from where you're from or whatever, and they instill that sense of pride that there's a kinship there and something belonging. You can recognise in it. Yeah, so I think in that sense it's really special, and it's bringing to the fore conversations that we otherwise wouldn't have had, that we should have had long ago.
Yeah, which is really, really positive. And then I kind of saw a slightly different viewpoint on this in that I was looking at the Women in Sport website, and they were saying that girls from the age of kind of 5 onwards don't actually want to engage in any kind of sport anymore. And that parents generally that had girls in their family were around 30% of parents actually were encouraging their girls to go and take up a sport, right? Whether that's for a career or just in the context of sport itself. Whereas in family and households where there were boys, it was 41%. And what we're seeing is that there isn't still this encouragement for girls to go into sports, even though we've had some massive progress like the Lionesses and the Euros and, just generally the development of the WSL team. What else is needed?
I think it's just making people aware. And I think, as we go through these next couple of generations, there'll be many more children now growing up with a female influence in their family, whether that's a parent, a carer, an auntie, a neighbour who they call auntie, whatever. Yeah. Female influences close to them, because yes, there's an enormous presence now around, an awareness around the Lionesses and our Olympians and so on, female athletes who've pushed the boundaries and done incredible things. But we all know as well that while that's inspirational, the people who are directly around you are the real difference makers on a day-to-day basis. And there'll be far more of them in children's lives now, boys and girls, for them to see. and they'll follow that. It's quite normal, isn't it? And when I look at my family, there are many, many sports people of all different abilities and levels, male and female. So I think I always would have ended up doing sport, although some of my siblings don't. They're completely uninterested in it.
Really?
Yeah, totally. But, so I think the next generations will see that change, because it's just often, like when I go and do talks, quite often people come up and say, I've never even thought of that. Because, like I said before, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And sometimes it's not deliberate, and people thinking, I'm not going to let my little girl do sport. And I think not encouraging her to do it is going to, affect her life chances. So that's what I want to do. Nobody's going to want to do that for their own child.
No.
It's just being aware that this is a really good thing for any child, what sport can give them. And particularly in a world now where, where else are they going to get the opportunity to build that resilience time and time and again, like sport does, setback after setback? Where else did they get the opportunity? Because I used to get that, certainly my generation, by just going out all day where I didn't have a phone. Nobody knew where I was. And I'd just be off doing all sorts of things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. But I had to learn, and then you'd realise, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then you'd be climbing somewhere you shouldn't and fall through a roof or a ceiling and go, okay, I nearly broke my leg, so I shouldn't do that again. Whatever it might be, there were all sorts of problems. You'd be problem solving constantly and working out with your mates
Life
and having that adventure all the time. Yeah, we don't have that now because sadly people don't feel safe enough for the children to be out. So we've restricted that. Then we've obviously got the influence of
everything
phones,
on the
TV,
phone,
etc. Yeah. So where else do kids get that other than things like sport, drama, theatre? So I think it's really vital that we encourage our kids to have as many of those experiences as possible, because every single experience I've had in sport, bar none, every single one has helped me in some way in the rest of my life.
What's been the most poignant experience then, would you say?
I don't think there has been. I think if I had to pick one overall, it'd be the fact that I've now become a woman who's proud of who she is and what she's done. From that kid who was constantly thinking, there's something wrong with me. What's up with me? Why do I want to do these sports that I shouldn't be doing? And there were many, many layers to that. For instance, why'd you dress like a boy? I got that all the time. I didn't dress like a boy. There weren't any clothes for girls to train in. I mean, back then, you've got to remember, there was only sort of aerobics attire. I'm hardly going to go to football in a leotard, am I? No. Like Jane Fonda. That'd be really weird. So there weren't women's football kits. There wasn't workout gear for women. You've got to think back, it wasn't like that.
If there was anything where women were encouraged to do any kind of sport, they still were expected to wear skirts and stuff. So,
exactly.
Which was still uncomfortable for women too.
Well, I got suspended in PE at school for that, because they've eventually said, right, you can play football, because they didn't have it on the curriculum for the girls then. And I was just desperate to play. And so they said, right, you can play with the lads, but you have to wear the PE kit, the girls' PE kit. And I said, you seriously not expecting me to play football? I'm the only girl already, and you want me to play in a skirt?
Yeah, and
it's
stand
half
out
a
even
frock.
more.
Like, are you for real? And I just contested it, and right, you're being belligerent, and I was in the wrong, because that was the rules back then. How silly. But, I think we're making progress with kit and uniform and stuff. So on lots and lots of layers, I can't say made to feel, but the messages I constantly got were not building me up, let's put it that way.
No.
So I think the most important thing is, as I say, me becoming someone who's proud of who I am and what I do, because from that platform, I can then hopefully be that voice, that role model I didn't have growing up, to encourage other young girls to, sort of make young boys aware of what we're capable of as female athletes, so that they grow up seeing it equally. There's so much more you can do if you feel proud of who you are. Yeah. Whereas if you don't, it's quite the opposite, and you live small.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because we've all got, a different type of light of our own. And I just think it's better, if we can shine it as bright as we can. I don't think someone else loses out by us. We shine a light upon them if we can. So I'd say that, but there's many, like how to deal with nerves, setbacks, challenges. There's an endless number of things that have helped me in the rest of my life that I've gained through sport.
Amazing. Please pick another piece of paper.
Inspiration.
So it's obvious that there were not many female athletes out there that would inspire you, but what did inspire you, other than the fact that you wanted to do good and you wanted to create change?
I really admire lots of the things that other athletes have achieved, and I always have. But my inspirations always have been, and still now, are the people that I know. The people in my family, for example. One of my sisters has got 3 kids that she raises on her own, and it's just phenomenal, because the 2-year-old in particular would be enough for, like, she needs a village. But so that's incredible. I've got other family members who've been through really, really difficult illnesses, and seeing what they've been through has just been remarkable. So, when you look at the people in my family, my immediate family, and then my friends and people that I've worked with, the day-to-day things that they've gone through are phenomenal. And you don't get medals for that.
Yeah.
You don't get recognised in the same way. Yet, the way that people handle those things with dignity and resilience and strength and love, still being able to give love to others even through that hardship, is remarkable to me. So I'm always inspired most by the people I actually know.
I love that. It's such a different answer as well, because usually there is somebody or a celebrity or an athlete that, you tend to go by, and they kind of become almost your benchmark of where you want to go. So I absolutely love that. Were there any athletes growing up that you aspired to be like? Because I can see that in your head there is no difference between a male athlete, a female athlete. You just wanted to play football, or you wanted to box, that was your thing.
Me and my dad, when I used to stay with my dad at the weekend, because my mum had me in the week and my dad had me at the weekend, we just had a solid diet of Rocky, Karate Kid, and Bruce Lee. That was pretty much it. That was our whole weekend. So, of course, I grew up, I thought Rocky was real for years.
Did you?
I was a kid, I didn't know any different. I thought it was real. And so, those early things really were, like Bruce Lee and all that stuff, because me and my dad would be, as soon as the film went off, that'd be it. The cushions would be out on the floor. The whole place would be...
Your sparring session.
Yeah, that was it. We'd be off like toy fighting and stuff. So, but then, my dad had a love of Roberto Duran, and I loved Sugar Ray Leonard and Muhammad Ali, of course. So, they were the boxers that I grew up. And then as a kid, my teenage years, you had the likes of, Giggs and Beckham and all that lot. So, football and boxing, there were plenty of influences, but there weren't really any.
Yeah, and was it hard?
I don't think you'd think of it really as a kid until somebody makes you aware of it. Like anything as a kid, you're not aware, until somebody tells you about it, or you learn acquire that information by life experience. Yeah, so I didn't think of it as any different. Plus, I was the only girl in the gym boxing, and I was the only girl playing football at school. So to me, I just saw myself as one of the kids in the gym and one of the kids at football. I didn't see it as different until it became very apparent that there was going to be a difference. Especially,
when was that specifically?
In boxing,
can you remember?
I remember very specifically in boxing, because I used to do all the same training that my little lad mates did, and we would go to the fights at the weekend, and I lived and breathed the sport, and I'd be cutting a slice off a cucumber to make my own gum shield and be running around the kitchen saying I was going to be a world champion and all that. I got to like the age of 11 when you can usually start skills bouts in boxing, which is no winner or loser, it's just like a practice. And my granddad, who ran our gym, he said, we'll get you all carded, we'll get you ready to box, and we're dead excited. And then he just looked at me and he said, "You can't box, kid." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "It's illegal in this country for females." And I said, "What, boxing?" And he said, "Yeah." And to a kid, illegal to me meant like proper stuff like burglary.
You're going to prison, yeah.
Not a kid doing a sport. They loved it. But that's another example, as I was saying before. There are sometimes you can get around things and sometimes you can't. So I could remain in the gym, and I did loads of sparring where I just would put the head guard on and they'd just pretend I was a boy, which you can get away with until a certain age. Yeah. But there are some things you can't do anything about. So that was very much my first realisation that, this being a girl business is going to be a big problem for me. And then, of course, when they brought women's boxing into the Olympics, those of us that were on the international team at the time, it was... wow, it was just amazing. Like the excitement and the feeling was like nothing else, only to find out that there would only be 3 weight categories. At the time, there was 10 for men, and we assumed there would be 10 for us. And for those of us who our weight category wasn't at the Olympics, that was it. It was just a closed door. That opportunity was just not on the table. Same with the Commonwealth Games, the European Games. It was devastating. So it's something that's come back and back. And then, like you were saying before about what makes you want to change things, it's all of those instances, big and small and in between, that took me to the point when I won the Commonwealth title in Zimbabwe. And that was an amazing feeling. It was the first British woman to win the Commonwealth title. It was an amazing experience over in Zimbabwe. We just loved it and obviously won the fight. And afterwards, not getting the belt was a real sucker punch because that's the point, isn't it? To get that trophy, that medal, whatever in sport. And when I came back to Manchester Airport, not having that belt to share with the people who meant most to me was a real sickener because loads of mine and my coaches, friends and family came to surprise us. Aww. And it was horrible not having it to share with them. And that wasn't about proving ourselves or ability. We'd put on a great fight. That's about your human dignity, and sport should magnify the very best in everyone, not the opposite. And when I had the conversation with the head of the Commonwealth Boxing Council on the Monday, so I'd fought on the Friday, flew back, got back Sunday night, rang on the Monday and said, it was a great experience, but not getting the belt was definitely not the fairy tale that I had in mind. To which he said, well, the manufacturers of the replica belt have ceased production. So I said, what's it got to do with me? He said, well, we do real belts for men and replica belts for women.
Wow.
So I said, oh, okay, just said it dead matter of fact. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, there's more money in men's boxing. I said, I know, but I should have had the choice to pay for it with my own money because I'm never going to get that moment back. Yeah. I've been robbed of that moment that I dreamt of from a kid.
And you've not done any less training or any less...
I've got no photos with it. I've got no memories with it. I haven't got that moment that I'd been dreaming of and driving towards and had that vision of really since being a little kid. And then I went on to say to him, the worst bit was coming back to the airport, not having it to share with the people who meant most to me. And I said, nothing we can do about what's happened. How quickly can I have a real belt? To which he said, well, you can have one within a couple of weeks, but they are quite expensive. So unless you've got a sugar daddy, you probably won't be able to have one, which is extremely difficult to put into words, that burning sense of injustice inside you when somebody speaks to you in that manner. But again, there was nothing I could do about the fact that had already happened. But what I could do was try and make it better. And that was what I had to go back to. I was raging, really, really raging with anger, really. That treatment, as many people have been through, whatever it might be, class, race, whatever, people have experienced that.
In any walk of life, they would have experienced that,
People will know that feeling. That was then for me to go back, as we just talked about earlier, what am I doing this for? To what's my purpose? Well, to use sport for good, to make a difference, to inspire others. How can I do that? So that's when the conversation opened up and I said, this can't happen to a future female champion. And then they made the women's Commonwealth title belt, which we got the first ever one in December that year, which was 2018. And last year when I was commentating on the boxing in Nottingham, I got to see that belt be handed to a female fighter for the first time ever, and you don't always get to see the change you've been part of. So that was amazing. Yeah, it was. So I was really lucky to see that. But again, as you say, some people might have had those moments and not been able to challenge it, but that's okay. Yeah. Because sometimes you might not be safe, literally, physically, to challenge, whatever it might be, racism or this, that and the other.
I think he would have not been safe. It felt like you might have hit the sucker punch. It was a phone call.
But, I don't think people should beat themselves up if they don't challenge everything all the time, because it's not always possible. So I think it's a shame if we are really angry with ourselves and you think, I should have said something there. You've got to do what you can at the time when it's right and when you feel able to, and then hopefully change can come if you go about it in the right way.
Mm. It kind of takes us on to your whole Pave the Way concept, which I'd love for you to share with us.
Well, Pave the Way came about because when I turned professional, usually you have like a nickname like the Cobra or the Assassin or whatever. And my nickname's SpongeBob SquarePants. So
I love it.
Doesn't lend itself the best, because whenever I used to get injured and put weight and I just turn into a square-shaped human, so which I'm partially there now. I've retired, but anyway. It wasn't the best for boxing. So I decided to go with Pave the Way as something that I wanted to stand for and represent. So we thought it'd only last a week. We just did a week of activities around my pro debut, like going to schools. I did a few community sessions, whatever, and it just really took off. So Pave the Way now is about, lifting the barriers to human potential by challenging gender stereotypes for boys, girls, men and women. Because boys and men face plenty of stigma and things that hold them back from reaching their potential, not just as in the workplace, but as parents or partners or whatever, or just human beings, that they can be held back too. So I think it's important, I just don't agree that if something's made better for women, men lose out. I don't think that's the case at all. I think something that's better for any human being is better for us all. So it's advocating that for everybody.
Just before we start with the next one, we're kind of halfway. So at this point, we have a question that's sponsored by Impermaker, and it's a kind of curveball question. So the question will be, how many men did you scare through your journey, whether that was football or boxing?
Hopefully none. I'd really like to, I hope none, because of the sports that I've been in, it's been predominantly male. And so they've been some of the most important influences in my life. That's included my dad and my granddad, who were my first coaches, certainly in boxing. But then throughout football and boxing, the majority of my coaches have been male, and they've been some of the most fantastic human beings I ever could have wished to have met, who've enriched my life greatly. So I hope I haven't scared any. What I do hope is that if they did have an opinion, that we were limited as women because of some of these myths that have followed us for years that, go way back to, I know people don't think it now, but it started with ridiculous stuff like can't run marathons because our uterus would fall out.
Yeah, the frailty. You're talking about the frailty
to every
ones.
marathon runner that's ever lived, and a baby comes out and other stuff doesn't drop out. What a silly thing to say. But that held women back for you. So, there's the equivalence now of these myths of what women can and can't do. So all I hope is that I've changed that in a positive way and brought them on board. I'd much rather do that than scare anybody. But people say I'm scary anyway. I think it's just a northern thing. The amount of people that say to me, when I met you, I was dead scared. And I say, what did I say? And they'll say, you went, you all right? So that's just hello, But
I've seen some of you fighting, and trust me, I'm definitely scared. Mental strength was the one that we came on to. Really big topic for me, this. I'm absolutely fascinated by it, because when I sit and listen to you talk about, breaking all of these barriers, trailblazing into two predominantly male-dominated sports, which you've absolutely smashed, all it tells me is that your mental strength is of a different level to the ordinary human being. Can you tell me what it takes? What's the composition, in your opinion, that makes you who you are? You talk about the wiring of your brain. What do you think it is?
I made a decision a long time ago that sport was my thing. It was all of my dreams were wrapped up in it. My self-identity, my self-worth. Those bits weren't direct decisions. Those were, what manifested from it. And they're not all healthy. I'm not saying those are all healthy, because having your identity wrapped up in anything outside of yourself, whether it's a partner, a job, whatever, it isn't good. But that is what happened, and I had to learn from it. But the decision that I did make was that my goals in sport were unconditional, like the love that I have for people, which is unconditional. My commitment to what I wanted to achieve in sport would also be unconditional. And my love for loved ones has been tested in that way, as it is for all of us. Not always deliberately by them, but, because things happen in life. And if you've got somebody you love with a deep, deep passion down in your soul, and you commit to, being with them right to the end, when they're, in palliative care, for example, that is a real commitment, and that is unconditional love, because it's tough. It's really, really hard seeing someone suffer and sitting through that, but that is the commitment that you make. That is how serious my commitment was to sport. It was unconditional. So therefore, no matter what I faced, whether it was injuries, which included 12 broken bones and 9 surgeries, none of which were fun, losing big moments and fights, having penalties saved in the biggest games of my life, that kind of utter heartbreak. And it is true heartbreak in sport. It's the risk is giving absolutely everything and not getting everything that you want.
Yeah.
It's a massive risk in life. It really is. And this business of, if you work really hard, you get what you want. No, you don't. That's absolutely not true. And it's a paradigm shift in your brain that when you think, but I have given everything, I have been dedicated, I've lived the life, why has it not happened? It's really, really, really hard. But that's the risk you take. And that was a commitment I made a long, long time ago, that unconditionally I was going to go for those goals in sport and live by those values, that why, if you like, of what I wanted to achieve.
Thank you so much. It's been so inspirational, honestly, just to hear your passion, your drive, the ambition that you actually want to still do more. for the future of the just women generally, as well as women in sport, is truly inspiring. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting this amazing podcast, and especially for at the beginning. I could do that every night, really, to get to sleep, if you don't mind.
I'll send you a recording.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.